I want to say that in the audience is, in my view, one of the greatest lawyers practicing in human rights in the world today, Yuri Markovich Schmidt, and his contribution in respect to human rights in Russia and internationally leaves me with the great honor of saying both of us represent a political prisoner in Russia, Mikhail Khodorkovsky. In my representation of Khodorkovsky, I have observed an operative dialectic or contradiction that I believe is helpful in explaining this issue of stability in Russia. A, Russia is a petrostate, which means that a tremendous amount of the income of the state comes from the rents of natural resources and not through the taxation of the individual. This feeds the lack of accountability of the institutions in Russia, and it empowers the executive and weakens the legislature and the judiciary. This feeds into a clan-like structure within the Russian leadership. This is very obvious from the present situation, where a man such as Igor Sechin, a man who has been in charge of state theft for a number of years, is actually placed in charge of Russian industry. At the same time, the president, and I believe honestly, Mr. Medvedev, is arguing that he wishes to bring rule of law to Russia. So this clan structure, in addition to the petrostate, has led to the attack on federalism, has led to the attack on the media, and has led to the rise of authoritarianism. And that very small group of Siloviki working with Sechin ascribe to a different ideological construct. It is an ideology that stresses national chauvinism and has been part of this regrowth of the Nashi and this nationalist movement. An example of the legal ramifications of this ideology is the new law on strategic sectors in Russia, which forecloses a massive amount of Western investment inside Russia. So while I and many others support Russian access and membership in the OECD and the WTO because we think this is positive, at the same time, Russia becomes more protectionist, as we've seen with the recent timber increase in tariffs that Finland has just sustained. The key issue that we in the West can do to assist Russia today is to speak the truth. Lying, the way the leaders of British Petroleum have lied to the British people about developments in Russia, brings no dividends. British Petroleum is a hostage of this investment dialectic, because the more they invested in Russia, in essentially a country without the rule of law, the more they had to become politically corrupt and argue for Russian interests with their own government in London. Because the currency of the past regime in Russia was a political currency, a currency of doing the bidding of that small group at the top, which is why the Italian company Eni engaged in laundering of Yukos assets, and why we even saw the specter of Germany's chancellor applaud Mr. Putin for being a democratic actor. And it is why I believe in the future it is important for us to not only speak the truth and argue the importance of rule of law, but to insist in Western society that our corporate leaders adopt the same attitude. Thank you very much. One of the fears from a business standpoint that those in power in Russia have is that they are very good at managing scarcity, which is why Transneft never allows enough volume in the pipeline. As long as there's not enough volume, those in power in the FSB are able to make sure that the activities of the companies who rely on the pipelines can be very closely monitored. It's another reason why Russia doesn't have an eastern outlet for its gas. So a tremendous amount of Russian posturing about going to the east if they don't get a Western deal is really, at this point, it can be viewed as bogus because they are now captured by their own pipeline system. And in respect to Andrei's comment, I think it's very important when there is the thaw or a hint of a thaw that we do two things. One, in fairness, whatever we may think, whatever we may be predisposed to think, Medvedev's opening speech was a historic moment for all of Russia. Never before had a Russian leader echoed the words Medvedev spoke on the day of his inauguration, saying in the first paragraph of his speech that his job was to honor human rights. This had never happened. Secondly, we know there is this clan tension. We know that there are hostages in jail because of the clan tension. We know that Mr. Sobchak, who is the Deputy Minister of Finance, is still in jail because he's been unwilling to release the rainy day fund to the Siloviki inside the Kremlin. The issue for us involved in Russian civil society is to understand that with Chancellor Merkel's address last week in respect to the issue of political prisoners, there has been a significant change in the West as well. People understand the mixed blessing of Medvedev and will hold him to his words. And I think it is incumbent upon all of us to extend for a period of time some benefit of the doubt as well. His revocation in respect to the media law is also a positive sign. Now we have to watch what he does with respect to some of the more obvious issues, such as the political prisoners that still exist in Russia today. My comment is this: the West does not exist. We weaken our arguments when we talk of the West. In Germany, Russian human rights matters. In Spain, it doesn't. We need to target those countries that don't care and not attack those that do. Lastly, the dialectic I spoke of is most obvious today because in the passage of this bill that restricts Western investment, Russia consigns its future to being a second-tier power. Russia is actually desperate for the very investment that they are foreclosing. And it is our job as those who advocate on behalf of Russia to bring that point home. It is the openness for investment that will give Russia the place on the world stage it deserves. Thank you.